Welcome back. Last week, Governor Hogan unveiled his budget proposal for the 2018 fiscal year and caused more than a little stir amongst Democrats in the state house. Jim, can you shed a little bit of light on the proposal and why it is so unpopular with House Democrats in the Maryland Assembly?
Well, we don't have a tax increase. Pure and simple. I think that's the major piece. The Democrats want a tax increase. Baltimore, I guess, feels like they're being slighted. Any number of reasons. Ron?
Well, when Governor Hogan came to Washington County, Hagerstown, a month and a half ago, stood in front of the Maryland Theater and said he was putting $7 million here. However, you have to be careful of the roadkill tax, or the roadkill bill. The roadkill bill wasn't roadkill as we think of roadkill on the highway. It was roadkill because of what the Democrats wanted. They set up a funding formula for projects.
Right, for transportation projects.
Yes. And
we're going to be on the short end of that equation.
But individually, Mike Miller, Mike Bush, and Peter Francho say, no, we think that Interstate 81 should get the money. So then when the budget comes out and there's no extra money and you have a problem in Baltimore, where the money's going, when it's not going to other places for rail, for subway, for whatever it is, then they get all upset because he didn't increase revenue.
Right. But he balanced the budget.
That's a key thing, balance, yeah.
Well, by charter, we have to have a balanced budget.
Yes,
there is no
state constitution.
There is no option.
So here is, and you can do that a couple of ways, right? So you could increase revenues by raising taxes. I think that's one way of doing it. But in all honesty, and I think this should not be a partisan issue. So too often we get caught in this paradigm of partisanship. As administrators of the state legislature one of their primary concerns should be to make sure that they spend our tax money as efficiently as possible. So can the state legislature tell me that the city of Baltimore, that all these various, that the Department of Transportation and all these other agencies are spending the money that we're putting in there? Because I agree, all these gamut of projects that we want to get done are very important. We should get them done. But how much waste is there? And ultimately, as a taxpayer, or all of us as taxpayers, we're kind of the bosses. It's in our interest to make sure that our state government, the people that we're putting into office, are spending our money as efficiently as possible. And this doesn't have to become it's not that we have to cut programs, or certainly before we have to cut programs, and we're not suffering from a lack of revenue as a state. We're in pretty good shape. Before we start cutting programs, we have to look at efficiency. And I think that's something, because we have been such a wealthy state for such a long time, we've taken for granted, and we really haven't focused on that. And I think if you look at the machines of government, and Baltimore is a great example, I think Baltimore sucks up a lot of the state's revenue without a whole lot of return or a whole lot of tangible results, because it is mismanaged.
The town and what they do with projects, I would agree with you, Colin. I would say what Baltimore brings to the table is the amount of people in tourism. The tourist dollars spent in and around Baltimore is unbelievable. There are as many people that go through the Inner Harbor in a year that goes through Disney World in Orlando. That's how many people there are that goes to the Inner Harbor, with all of the restaurants, with everything that the Inner Harbor does. Now, if you have state money that goes into Baltimore, and you have department secretaries that oversees that money, and they're allowing it to be mismanaged, that's the state's fault.
Well, and that's a good point, Ron. And the other thing that I wanted to point out is there are, in my opinion at least, some structural issues with how we budget and how we do things in Maryland. For example, if you have a 5-year project on the books, 5-year capital project, right? So, and it has a 5-year budget of X. There is some statute in Maryland that says for all of the out years, you automatically increase the budget without anybody having to do anything. It just happens.
No, it's in next year's budget.
Right. It's in next year's budget, plus there's an increase because it's kind of like a cost of living increase, but oftentimes that cost of living increase, especially in the last several years, has outpaced what the actual cost increases were. Right. So we end up with extra money. Now, I got to say, in Washington County, between the barracks improvements and the library, you may remember, we benefited from that problem. But still, it's a structural problem in the way we do business, because why do we do that? Why is that just automatically, why do we just automatically increase those out years budget?
But that's part of local, Washington County does the same thing. City of Hagerstown does the same thing. When you talk about a law that requires the balanced budget for the state of Maryland, we got the same thing here.
But I understand that, but do we, on out-year projects in Washington County, automatically increase the budget amount? So if it was a $100,000 budget, we automatically make it $110,000?
Depends on what the contribution from the general fund will be to the
But my point,
to the
in
capital
Maryland,
budget.
that always happens. In the state of Maryland, structurally, that always happens.
But Clayton Wilcox did a really great job paying for the new, well, not for BISFA, but for the new dwelling down Downsville Pike. What did he spend? $12 million? Where did he get the money? Yeah. Money that he saved through capital projects, through surplus money that the county allowed him to keep, and now he's still got sitting on maybe $4 to $8 million of money that he can put into the new BISFA in downtown with that major development. So a lot of times, if that's done right, you have the money to do major projects.
I think my point, though, at a larger level, is I think we need to look at our policies in terms of how we spend money and how we budget and all of this, and I think we need to amend those, not only at the state level but also at the federal level. This whole thing is I'm gonna have a balanced budget in 10 years. Well, guess what? You're not going to be there in 10 years. I want to know what you're going to do this year. Show me what you're going to do this year and for the years you're in office. I don't want to hear this 10-year crap.
No, because 10 years exceeds the term of the person in office, and everything
and it
is off the
exceeds,
table.
if you look at business, yes, they probably have somewhere a 10-year plan, but they're not going out and advertising it, because guess what?
It's going to change.
It has no basis in reality.
If you have a multi-billion-dollar wall that's going to be built.
Right, and Mexico's going to pay for it.
If you have a multi-billion-dollar wall that's going to be built, it's going to be built by us, the American taxpayer, and then you're going to have a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure program, and you're going to give a tax cut to the rich, where are you going to cut your budget?
He didn't say the rich.
He didn't?
Yeah.
I never seen the other folks get a tax cut.
Well, there have been a couple along the way, but usually they tended to be made up by tax increases later on because we had to. But I think, honestly, that's going to be the last word on that topic.
All right.
And we kind of went off on a tangent.
We did.
Thank you, gentlemen. Next up on the flip side, our panel weighs in on the growing tension in Syria. Stay tuned.